Hello Fred Douglass students and families, and welcome to our virtual music lesson number 3. Remember, these online lessons are for everyone. They're great to watch for any grade, so if you have siblings that are either older or younger, you can watch these videos together with them. And in this video, we're going to start off by practicing writing and drawing some different music notes and then putting them together for rhythms. And then after that, we're going to jump over to one of your favorite songs, I think, Hey Mr. B-Boy, and do an activity with that song. Alright, so let's get started with virtual music lesson number 3. So starting with our rhythm writing, get yourself a piece of paper and a pencil. So for your papers, you can use any scrap piece of paper. For example, here I have a blank seating chart that I'm not really using anymore, so I can just use the back because it's empty. Or this paper right here was a welcome at the beginning of the year that I sent out, or when we had our open houses, I had it in my classroom. And the back is empty, so I can use either of these papers. If at home you have blank paper, you can use that. Maybe if you have a notebook that has any blank pages in there, you can use that. Or like mine here, you can use any scrap papers that you have around your house. Maybe it's some old schoolwork, some old math, or maybe some old reading papers. Anything you have that has a blank side, you can use that. Now, before I start drawing any notes, let's talk about the parts of a note so you know what I'm talking about when I'm actually drawing the notes. So to start off, when we have a note, let's say I'm just going to draw a quarter note for now. Alright, so there's my quarter note. This little thing right here that's all filled in with black, that little circle, that is called a note head. So, for example, if we're practicing drawing a quarter note again like we're doing here, or maybe some different notes, and I say draw the note head, all that means is that it's one of these circles, and sometimes even the note heads, like for this one, the half note, the note heads are empty. So just listen when I say maybe the note head will be filled in, or maybe the note heads will be empty for some of the notes. Now this part that's right here, the line that goes up and down, this part is called the stem. So far we have the note head that can be either filled in or blank, and then we have the stem, which is just one line that goes up and down. Now if I turn this note right here, I'm going to fill in that note head, and then add a little guide to the top and make it one single eighth note. This little part right here is going to be called the flag, because it looks like there's a little flag hanging off the top. And now there's one last part of the note. I'm going to erase this right here, the flag, and I'm going to connect these two together and make it into an eighth note pair, or a TT. Now this thing right up here, that's going to be, and now since they're connected, this line at the top is going to be our beam. So they're beamed together. So right on the top here, I have the 5 notes that we're going to be practicing writing today. So we have a quarter note, a single eighth note, a pair of eighth notes, 16th notes, and then a quarter rest. So let's start on this side, and then we'll slowly make our way through all the notes. So starting with a quarter note. Or in music, we called these notes, when we were saying different rhythms, we said ta for this kind of note. So the quarter note, you're going to start at the bottom. You're going to draw your note head and fill it in. And then going up from this side of the note head, you're just going to draw a straight line going up for the stem. So we have a filled in note head, and then the stem for a quarter note. And that's it, super easy. So I'm going to erase that and move on to the next note. The next one, we're going to do a single eighth note. And when we had two eighth notes together, we would call that a TT. But since there's only one single eighth note, we're just going to call it 1T. So for this one, you're going to start at the bottom with a note head and fill in that note head. Then on this side of the note head, we're going to draw that stem going all the way up. Then at the top, we're going to draw in that little flag. So we're going to make a rounded shape going out and then a little bit pointed. So when you're doing this part, it's kind of like at the top you're drawing an R, but it's kind of loose and not really connected. So pretend this line is that stem, and then you're going to draw the R, but it's not really connected in the middle here. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. I'm going to erase my board. This time we're going to do an eighth note pair. And if one single eighth note is just called a T, an eighth note pair, we call it a TT. So there's two of them. So for the eighth note pair on the bottom of your paper, we're going to draw two note heads and fill them in. And I'm going to draw them kind of close to each other. Now going up from that same side, from the right side of your note head, we're going to draw that stem going up, one stem going up. On the other side, another stem going up. Then at the top, we're going to draw that beam to connect the two eighth notes and make them a pair. So now we have a TT with two note heads, two stems, and a beam at the top connecting both of them. Now we're going to erase that, move on to our 16th notes. And in music, we call these tika tikas. So there's 4 sounds in the 16th note. Chi, ka, chi, ka. So 4 sounds, tika tika. So now on the bottom, we're going to draw 4 note heads to start with. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. And make sure you fill in your note heads for the tika tika or the 16th note. Now just like all the other ones we did so far, we're going to draw a stem coming up from the right side of the note head. So for each note head is going to get 1 stem. And just like we did before for the 8th note pair, or the TT, at the top we're going to do 1 line connecting all of our stems together, or 1 beam, and then we're going to go underneath and draw 1 more beam. So for the tika tika, or the 16th notes, we're going to have 2 beams, 1 at the top connecting all of them, then 1 underneath. So 2 beams for a 16th note. Now last one I think is the trickiest. I'm going to erase my board here. So last one I do think is the trickiest is a quarter rest. So usually for this note it would be totally silent, or we would say a shh. So I'm just going to put sh in parentheses. Maybe sometimes we say sh, or usually we just leave it totally silent, nothing at all. So for this one, it looks a little tricky, but it's a lot easier than you would think. So first, we're gonna draw a Z, and it's kind of on its side. So usually when we draw a Z, it's a little bit more straight like that, but we're gonna take it and kind of stick it a little bit on its side. And underneath that, right at this little point, I'm gonna draw a dot for now, but right at this point connecting, we're gonna draw a little C. So all you need to do for the quarter rest is draw a Z, then right at this corner, we're gonna connect a C. So I'll draw it one more time so you can see. Gonna do a Z, kind of squished on its side. Then right at the end here, just draw a C connecting it at the bottom. And that is it, super easy. As long as you do those 2 steps, Z and then C on the bottom connecting it. So if you are having trouble drawing any of these notes, feel free to take your time, maybe pause the video for a little bit and take as much time as you want, or you can even take your paper and then gently hold it up to the screen. If it's your computer, a phone, or a tablet, or whatever you're using, you can hold it up very gently and trace over it. Maybe that'll help if you do that a couple times. So take your time, there's no need to rush, and practice drawing your notes as many times as you need. Okay, now I have a challenge for some of the higher grades that might be watching this. We're going to be practicing drawing a music staff. If you're in band or learning how to play an instrument, you might be a little bit more familiar with a music staff. So starting on your paper, we're going to take your pencil or your pen, or I'm going to take my marker. Right in the middle, I'm going to draw one big line going all the way across, like that. Now on this side, on the left side, first we're going to start and draw the meter. So remember, meter just means how our music is grouped. For today, let's just do the meter of 4. So I'm going to do a 4 at the top of the staff and a 4 on the bottom of the staff, or on top of the line and then underneath the line. Now all the way on the other end, or the right side, I'm going to draw a double bar line. So that double bar line just means that the music has come to an end. So we're reading all through the music, then right here it's finished. For the double bar line, you have 2 lines, just like the name says. One line at the end is going to be just a little bit thicker, and then this line is going to be a little bit thinner. And one last thing that we're going to add to this double bar line, you can add one little dot on top and one little dot underneath the line. Now that just means that it's a repeat. So pretend you have some rhythms and some music here. You're going to read all the way through to the end. You're going to see this little repeat sign. Jump back to the beginning, read it all the way through to the end, go back, repeat it again and again as many times as you want for this example. So make sure you draw this blank staff on your piece of paper if you have some spare piece of paper, because we're going to need it in a little bit at the end of this lesson. Now I'm going to go on to Quaver and open up lesson number 3 that goes along with this video, and I'm going to open it up to the Hey Mr. Beat Boy full score page, so it looks like this right here with the 4 different lines. We're going to listen through Hey Mr. Beat Boy all the way through and follow along with the highlighted parts as the song is playing. And if you want to listen to the song on your own, make sure you join our new virtual music class on Quaver. I'm going to put the code on the screen, but it is E6HQD. And pause it for a second, pause the video for a second if you don't have that code yet, and make sure you go on to Quaver and put that code in so you can play Mr. Beat Boy. And listen really as many times as you want. Alright, so let's listen to it. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the beginning of Hey Mr. Beat Boy, and notice right here at the beginning in that green part, the third line down, or the bass part that's labeled, there is a certain rhythm that keeps repeating over and over. Let's just listen. I'm going to play just the beginning. Listen and try to find some kind of pattern that keeps repeating at the beginning in that green bass part. Alright, I'm going to pause it, go back to the beginning, take a look, and try to follow my mouse. So in this first, right here, where it's blocked off between these lines, that's called a measure. So in this first measure, we have a quarter note or a ta, then it goes a little bit lower to play that rhythm. And then in measure number 2, we have something that's very similar, not exactly the same as measure 1, but it's very similar. Then we're going to go back to, oops, what did I just do? All right. So looking at the green part again, in measure 1, we have that pattern. In measure 2, this part, it's very similar. There's one thing that's a little bit different. That single little eighth note or that single little T isn't in this one, but everything else is exactly the same. And then we go over to measure 3, and this one is the same exact rhythm pattern as number 1. So listen again, try to follow along with the green part and see how similar that measures 1, 2, and 3 are, and then 4 changes up a little bit. So let's listen, focus on the rhythms in 1, 2, and 3. Okay, I'm going to pause it again. Now we're on the next page of the song. So this time we're on measure 5, 6, 7, and 8. And this looks very similar to what we just listened to in the beginning, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we have that same pattern. Number 5 looks pretty similar to that first one we looked at. Then this looks pretty similar to number 2. Remember, it's a little bit different than this one because we're missing that little eighth note at the end. And then number 3 is exactly the same again. So let's listen. The pattern repeats in these next 4 measures of music. Alright, I'm going to pause it before they start singing again and go back to the beginning. So this repeated pattern that we keep seeing here at the beginning of Mr. Beat Boy, and it plays throughout the whole entire song, and then at the end you can hear this pattern by itself again. That repeating pattern in music is called ostinato. So ostinato just means that in music that there's a repeated pattern that keeps coming back and back and back. So that's all for our virtual music lesson number 3. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to leave some comments down below if you practiced your music writing and your music notes and how that went for you. Don't forget to follow Fred Music Class on Instagram and Twitter, and I'll see you guys next week for some more music lessons on here on YouTube.